Okay, so I've had some folks ask me if I would do a stick welding video. The aluminum welding part didn't go so well trying to use a stick welder, but I have some old rods. These are about 10 years old. They're 6013s, 1/8 inch, and I'm going to do a little bit of welding on 1/8 inch steel. I just want to see if this is even going to work. That was my test bead. Right now I've got it set at 120 amps. I'm thinking that's about where I would have been with my Hobart AC/DC welder. And so we're going to try this out and see what happens. Alright, there we go. Forgive me, I got terrible hand tremors and cancer doesn't help. Alright, that's obviously a little hot, but it'll put down a bead. Like I said, it's pretty. We did do it. Let's back off a little bit. Let's go to 110 amps. See what happens if I do that. Alright, let's see. 6013s are pretty easy to roll a bead on. I've got some 6011s, and I don't know if these are supposed to run a 6011. I'm thinking 6011 is supposed to be AC, where a 6013 can be AC or DC. But I'm sure somebody will correct me on that. Alright, it ain't pretty, but it is a bead. And so I think we try the 6011. They've always been my nemesis. They'll weld through anything. My God, they are hard to weld with, in my opinion. 7018s, 6013s. Those were always my go-tos. I don't know if I like the positions on their the electrode holder, but it appears that all of these electrode holders are exactly the same, regardless of brand, to include even our domestic welders like Lincoln and all the others. It might be a little hot today. That's a pretty small rod. We'll see. Yeah, I'm a little hot. That's a little tiny rod. We'll drop down to I was doing a little buzz box. I'd probably be right around 70, I would think. But we're going to go to 75 because I'm thinking that is exactly what the old Lincoln tombstone will be at running this rod. one. Yeah, I'm shaking like crazy and I can't hold myself steady. So that just goes to show you that you can be a shaky guy like me and you can still put two pieces of metal together if you really wanted to. Not quite as clean, obviously, as the 6013. The 6011s were never known to be really clean, but they'll weld through anything, rust, paint, you name it, you can pretty much weld through it. So there you go. It will stick weld. And that's my first time using the stick welder feature on the 205DS. Okay, well, our the 6011, 6013s run. You know, I'm so out of practice. It's probably been about 5 years since I've welded with a stick welder. And since then, I have developed, obviously, some extremely severe hand trimmers, which for stick welding doesn't work in your favor. MIG welding's fine. I mean, we're making little circles or doing little weaves anyway. So, you know, the MIG welding, the trimmers don't bother me as much and don't seem to bother my welding as much. But being that this is the first time I've stick welded in 5 years since I've developed these severe trimmers, I got to tell you, it's a challenge, but it worked. And if for those of you that are just getting started, hopefully that's encouraging, because you're seeing a guy with some severe trimmers actually able to start and run a bead with a stick welder. Now, if you bought the 205 or the 250, you're most likely you did it because you want to, you know, you're going to MIG weld. And whether you use flux core, which I don't have any flux core to try, I may try that if I can find some flux core. I know some folks have asked me about that as well. It's been a long time since I welded with flux core. Typically, you know, I used to keep it around because the guys, when we were out four-wheeling, all of your little outdoor welders, that, you know, your Ready Welds and all those, they all run the flux core for obvious reasons. It's not like you're running around with a gas tank when you're out four-wheeling. But as far as you know, I always just gas weld with solid wire. That being said, if you bought a MIG welder, you're planning on using the MIG welder, and it's just so much easier. Once you use a MIG welder, you don't want to go back to welding with a stick. You can weld and you know, get it set up right. You're welding upside down, you're welding sideways, you're welding in all these different positions that is much more difficult to do when you're trying to stick weld in that same position. You just don't have, I don't think, I never could ever get that kind of control over the stick welder like I can with a MIG welder. And it's just a MIG welder, just so much more convenient. But with that said, they will run a stick welder, and there are times when that can be really handy. Case in point, you've got 30 wire in your welder, okay? You're going to be working, I'm just going to take a project I would be working on, for example. Let's say that I'm working on an axle, all right? And I've got 30 wire in. All of my brackets I'm welding are 1/4 inch. The tubes are 3/8. I've got them cut in. But all my other brackets, frames 1/8, all this stuff on. We said we're putting some links and stuff on. Well, the 30 wire is going to be fine. And I've got, especially if you got the 250, now you're set up, you can have your synergic settings set at, say, for that 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch. But now you're going to go, you want to step up a little bit more heat. And yes, you can, probably not recommend it, I've done it. You can use that 30 wire to weld those 1/4 inch thick brackets onto a 3/8 tube, 5/16 tube. Well, you know, you've beveled it, so you're going to get a good root, and that first root's going to heat up the metal, and then you come back, and yes, it would work. But that may be a good opportunity to grab your stick welder, chuck up a nice big rod, and lay the bead down with a stick to run that quarter to that 3/8, and you didn't have to change wire. All you did was just put your electrode holder on. You're already grounded, and voila, you've got a you didn't have to go through all the hassle of changing out your wire to go to an 035 wire, so that you felt really comfortable about what you just did. Where you could do that and get a really strong weld with a 7018 rod, have good heat penetration, and know that you've got a really strong, safe weld, especially when you're dealing with links. You don't want those coming loose when you're on the road or off-road. So that's where that can come in handy. So yes, the stick welder actually works quite well. As far as arc stability, it's been so many years I couldn't tell you how it compares to to my old Hobart AC/DC transformer welder. I don't remember what they call them, LX something, whatever. It's like a 230. I don't know if it was any better. It's been so many years. I don't know how to compare them, but it did lay a bead. And if I would have played with it a little bit more, bevel it in, I probably could have laid a nice bead. And you always know with a 6013 when you're welding really nice with it, because if you get a really good bead and you lay it in nice and pretty, the flux will literally start peeling and rolling itself up, and you'll have this absolute beautiful bead, and the flux just flakes right off. I wasn't getting that. The flux was having to chip off pretty hard, and I think that's because I was running too hot. So I think if I would have cooled it down a little bit, probably would have worked better, but it still worked. So yes, you can stick weld with your 205DS. Thanks for watching.